Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. I'm Task Force Bourbon, and today I'm going to be reviewing John J. Bowman, a single barrel bourbon that's offered by A. Smith Bowman Distillery. So I actually just returned from there less than 1-2 hours ago and had a fantastic time. I just wanted to share that experience with you all and share with you all one of their better offerings that I could get my hands on at this time. So without further ado, let me pull over the gift bag that I took home with me, which includes the John J. Bowman. Oh, that's the back. Single barrel as promised. And also they serve their tastings out of what's a wee Glencairn with their own logo adorned to it, to the front of it. You'll notice the difference here between the two. Let me move back here. Here's the wee Glencairn in the regular size, the standard issue stuff. So, for the sake of consistency and spirit, pun intended, I'm going to go ahead and drink out of this thing. Well, I'll try to. But before I do, like always, I'm going to go ahead and lead in with a little bit of history. A little bit of research. I obviously got a bit more, in my memory right now since I just returned from the distillery itself. But I'll lead with the history of, the Bowman Brothers writ large. So John, Abraham, Joseph, and Isaac Bowman were Virginia militia officers in the Revolutionary War, who were sometimes called the four Centaurs of Cedar Creek. I don't got a lot of history on that other than the fact that they were just, one or all of them were considered good horsemen. But in 1779, they led 30 pioneer families to Kentucky and established Bowman Station. We'll get to that in a little bit here, but I do want to take a second to talk about the Bowman Brothers and their contribution to American history and their participation in the Revolutionary War just a little bit, because it's pretty cool. You can do your own research in depth if you like afterwards, but I'll just provide a little bit now. John participated in campaigns with George Rogers Clark throughout the West, at that time meaning Ohio and Illinois, to secure the frontier. In 1779, Bowman led a force of 300 soldiers against the Shawnee town of, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, I don't want to offend anybody, but in order to prevent Native Americans from attacking frontiersmen settling in Virginia. Just 2 years later, Bowman served as Justice of the Peace over the First County Court held in Kentucky and was later appointed military governor of Kentucky County. Abraham served in most of the northern campaigns during the Revolutionary War, which culminated in leading a charge against the final redoubts at Yorktown. Joseph was second in command to Clark, was injured at the end of the Illinois campaign, and succumbed to his wounds in 1779. Isaac was charged with leading a band of settlers back from Fort Kaskaskia, again, something I should have not tried to pronounce, but I just did, Illinois in 1779, only to be captured by natives. He survived his torturous imprisonment, escaped, and spent nearly 2 years returning to the colonies via Cuba. All right, Netflix, let's get on it. We need a documentary series or, go ahead, a live-action series on these brothers, because they sound badass. In 1927, their great-great-grandson, Abram S. Bowman, purchased Sunset Farm Hills in Fairfax, Virginia. Now that's Reston, with the intent of operating a dairy and granary on the sprawling 7,200 acres. With an abundance of crops and Prohibition's end, the distillery was founded in 1934 on the day after the end of Prohibition. Well timed, my man. He began selling what is still sold today is Virginia Gentleman Whiskey. From the time of its founding until the 1950s, it was the only legal whiskey distillery in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's cool. The primary brands produced by the distillery were, again, Virginia Gentleman and Fairfax County Bourbon Whiskeys. A. Smith Bowman Distillery was purchased by Sazerac in 2003. So why does Sazerac sound familiar? It should for most of us, but they're the parent entity that also owns Buffalo Trace. They also own the Barton 1792 brands as well. They're doing great things. And since 2013 has been led by master distiller Brian Pruitt. All right, so Pruitt works alongside master distiller Harlan Wheatley, who's the master distiller over at Buffalo Trace, and we love him. who provides them, so I'm going to call them ASB for short here, ASB with single run distillate, since they don't produce their own. So they don't produce their own. Buffalo Trace provides that first distillate. All right. Now you'll hear some rumors that they have a set, they distill it twice and then they give it to them. But, the research that I've done has shown, and so the research I just got from talking to some of the tour guides there is that, they get a once distilled distillate and then they distill it twice more over at ABS. And they do that through their two stills, which they've named after the Bowman Brothers' parents, Mary and George. All right, so I got a quote here from the master distiller Pruitt, who says, really, it's something that gives us those smooth flavor characteristics. We've been triple distilling since the 80s. It gives us a nice smooth character, rounds it out a little bit, and softens it out. So triple, distilling isn't something new for Irish whiskey or some scotches even, but and again, it's not something you don't necessarily see in bourbon, but it's not exactly common either. So that's something that does make this a tad unique. And we'll talk about, if that's a good thing or not in a moment when I go to taste it here. But rumors talking about how many times it's distilled. A. Smith Bowman says that they enjoy the benefits of what Pruitt describes as, quote, a large, consistent fermentation process, which provides the distillery with a solid starting base to use before distilling the juice 2 more times. So there you have it. So out of Pruitt's own mouth, he goes on to say that he likes it. Right, he does it twice more, and he does it so that he can have that sort of equal base to start from. In 2016 and 2017, they won World's Best Bourbon at the World's Whiskey Awards, so some of you might have heard that. And although ASB also produces Virginia Gentleman, their 2 core whiskeys are, this one, of course, the John J. Bowman Single Barrel, and the Bowman Brothers Small Batch. While they do share the same mash bill, they do different age. Bowman Brothers is rumored to be about 6 to 8 years, and this is rumored to be about 9 and 11. However, none of their bourbons at all carry an age statement. And that's because, as Pruitt says, quote, one of the reasons we don't put an age on there is we target a flavor profile, not a specific age or number. All right, we really try to hit the flavor and target what we're going for. So in addition to those products, ASB regularly releases Isaac Bowman Port Finished and their limited Abram Bowman experimental projects. That's where they're really breaking out. So they like the experimental stuff. They try and break the mold from their Sazerac Buffalo Trace brothers, and that's the opportunity that they have there to do. So we saw they have a Hungarian oak barrel that's going on, and they're experimenting with that. But I think they have 15 or 16 to date. Usually an annual release. Sometimes it's been 2, 3, even 3 times, I believe, a year. But that's included a cider finish, vanilla finish, gingerbread beer finish, coffee finish, amongst others. They got a 16-year age dated, double oaked finish. They got a bunch of stuff. So again, there's a bunch of rumors circulating out there. Is it using mash bill number 1, which is a low rye from Buffalo Trace? Is it using a high rye from Buffalo Trace? About 15% rye rumored, because that's undisclosed as well. Officially it's undisclosed. I've even heard it's a mix of the both. But talking to some of the people there today, they claim it's their own. It's just managed and controlled and done there at fermented by Buffalo Trace, but it's their own mash bill. So who knows, right? At the end of the day, well, obviously the master distillers know, but we don't as a consumer, because it's not on the label, it's not disclosed, and that's just part of the things that we have to accept when things aren't on the label. However, I will say this: if you look at the post I just made about the review I did here, you'll notice, a scroll of 10 pictures, one of which has the word love that they put adorned, on one of their walls, and inside the L, they've got corn, rye, and barley put in there, within the percentage range that's supposed to be roughly where they think, in reality, the mash bill really is. So take that for whatever it's worth. Maybe it's just a cool marketing gimmick that they put up on the wall or whatever, but they do claim that it's a higher rye mash bill, so maybe that tells us a little something. All right, so other than that, what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go pull up some of these notes so I can surmise them for you without sitting here all day. But not that that's a bad thing. Still got a nice little pop on it. We'll pour ourselves a healthy pour. Well, whatever that means inside this little wee glass. I'm guessing that's about average, so don't call anybody on me. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with the nose, like a good bourbon steward always should. So either, again, I'm not fantastic at nosing, but there's not a lot going on here. If you roll it around and look at it, you can tell it's a little on the lighter bodied side, but it's 100 proof. There's some vanillas. There's a little fruit, almost like an apple or something going on. Not a baked apple. Almost like a fresh kind of green apple. And I tend to get those flavors on what's younger bourbon. So again, this is rumored to be around 9 and 11 years old. It's a non-age stated bourbon, so we don't really know. But those nosing notes usually come from, for me at least, on younger bourbons. And again, I've already cheated a little bit. I've had a little bit of this. I don't think that's true, because I don't think that this is in fact a young bourbon. I just feel like those flavors do come from younger bourbons. But I'll take the first sip here. Okay, so let's get some of the big stuff out of the way. It's medium-bodied. It's very mellow. It's almost like you're drinking. And this is blasphemy, maybe to some. To others, it's the Holy Grail. Almost like Jack Daniels, in the sense that you got that charcoal Tennessee mellowed, kind of deal going on, where I'll go ahead and say this now. You can, I guess, love me or hate me, but I'm not a fan of charcoal mellowing. I think it strips some of those things that we love on a bourbon. Like I love non-chill filtered. This is also a chill filtered bourbon, so maybe that explains it, being it chill filtered, being it triple distilled. Maybe it's a combination of the both. But it's a bit mellow, and it's reminiscent to me, at least, of the mellowness that I find on a Tennessee whiskey. So you got some classic vanillas right up front, kind of brief, and this also came with a little kind of card here that tells you some of the stuff about the distillery, right, and some of their other offerings. Okay, and on the back here's a couple more. They got an experimental series they launch. They got a vodka they run. They got a gin that they run. They got a rum that they run. But within these are notes, tasting notes, official tasting notes, and I don't know how you could necessarily do that for a single barrel, because that's the fun of a single barrel, or hate of a single barrel sometimes, where they're different. Right? That's the whole point of a single barrel. They're supposed to be controlled by the master distiller. So when I say a single barrel, and I can trust that it comes from a reputable distiller and a reputable master distiller, or at least team on some of the larger distilleries, that it means that it's going to be a little more controlled in the sense of quality and flavors and profiles and what have you. But so, anyways, their official tasting note says toffee, leather, figs, almonds, and a long, smooth, dry finish. Okay, so I don't get the toffee at all. The figs, maybe loosely, maybe 0.5%, barely. Almonds, I do get. I got them all day long, so good call. It says leather. I could see that in the sense that it's got that sort of earthy, drying note, but I would actually equate it more to like a tobacco leaf. Not necessarily like a sun-dried thing going on. And I don't know if that makes sense or not anyways, because they have their, I think it's a cement warehouse where they age all their stuff, because they age it there on site in Virginia. All right, so they bring that first, distill it twice more, age it in there, and bottle it in their own Virginia warehouse. And it's not climate controlled, right? They do set it, as we were told by the tour guide there, at 50 degrees, so that way it never reaches below 45, and they claim that 45 degrees and under, a bourbon will actually stop aging inside the barrel. All right, so that's why they do that. But what that means, though, is that they're all going to be the same in terms of aging and whatnot. So when I would normally get that kind of sun-dried tobacco note, I might could surmise that it means that it's maybe aged on the top floor. And I have benchmark top floor as a reference, and I definitely find it to be true there. It's got those warmer kind of notes, I guess pun intended again. But I can't say that's going to be true here because of where they're aging it. What is cool about this bourbon, before I talk about the bad though, is it gets on the mid creamier, and it takes that first vanilla, very classic vanilla by the way, not like an imitation vanilla, but a classic bourbon vanilla. So, people who have drank bourbon, more than a few days now, know that you're going to find vanilla, you're going to find caramel, you're going to find oak to some degree, right? So it's no surprise, like yeah, vanilla, right? But what this vanilla does though, is it turns it almost like into a custard, like a very creamy type, vanilla. I think I actually said that on another bourbon yesterday, so I'm seeing a trend here. But again, what I don't like is that bit of oak, in the sense it gets a touch spicy. So I wrote that there's cayenne. I could be convinced of black pepper. It goes from it's actually underlying. It's very subtle the whole time. It's like this second side mission that sits here the whole sip, and then boom, now it's the center stage. You ignored it for so long. Here I am. You're not going to ignore me anymore. There's this spice here, like a cayenne kind of thing. And you know what actually reminds me of is, what is it? I got a Henry McKenna, the Henry McKenna 10-year bottle and bond. It's got that sort of same cayenne spice for me. Again, this is a single barrel, so whatever that means in terms of consistency across this brand, but that's there. It's not something I personally enjoy. That's not necessarily a bad flavor, because a lot of people do enjoy a bourbon that finishes spicier. The notes on this note card here does say that it ends dry. I do find that to be true. It is very dry. However, what I do also find on the finish, which is super cool, is you got a lot of cocoa, a thick helping of cocoa. Who doesn't like chocolate, right? In any way, shape, or form, right? So even take that, bitter, dark chocolate stuff, with 100% cacao that's supposed to be good for you and, no sugar. I'm still eating it, right? It's chocolate. I'm eating it. So there's a lot of chocolate going on here on the end. It's not creamy like, I was talking about on the mid with the vanilla, like you'd find maybe on a milk chocolate if you're still, on the chocolate, train here. But the cocoa is very, very prominent, and again, who doesn't enjoy that? But it's like what do you got? Like that cayenne seasoned chocolate. So that's a good thing. So what I try to do here, before I do this, actually, I'm going to go ahead and give you my rating. So I rated a 4.0 on a 5.0 rating scale. 4.0 is the first one that I would formally call personally good, right? I've talked about this before, where 3.5s technically fit that bill, right? However, 4.0s are something I'm keeping on my shelf, something I'm going to tell my friends to go seek out, right? 4.5s have to literally excite me, all right? This doesn't literally excite me. And being a single barrel, right, it should, right? There should be a little bit more excitement here. And it just isn't there. But it's a great bourbon. It's one I'm going to recommend to drink neat, as with all bourbon, right? However, it doesn't reach to that excitement 4.5 level. Apologies, my light just turned off here, if you're losing me, but it's more about, the taste in the bourbon anyways. So what I like to do, like I was beginning to do there a moment ago, was sort of surmise this in a way that doesn't get into those nuanced flavors. So I'm going to take this last sip here and try to describe it in a way that's more broad scope, that might apply to a few more palates than just my own. Creamy. There's that earthy almond bit going on with a kick like a pepper spice. Whatever you translate that to on your own palate is for you to determine. For me, it's cayenne. For you, it might be black pepper. For you, it might be chili. For you, it might be oak. For me, it's cayenne. But it starts out creamy with definitely some sort of earthy undertone. I got a whisper of rye at one point. So that does further my belief that this might be, some truth to that L on that wall that they hung up there in the distillery that says it's a high rye bourbon or suggests it's a high rye bourbon. I could be convinced of that. There's a whisper of that rye in there that just makes sense. But yes, so creamy, almonds, a little bit of like that because that touch of earth stuff going on, and spicy. It's a good bourbon. Recommend it. I cheated. I saved just a dash more for myself, so I'll do that and finish off and say cheers. So pending any questions, I'll try to answer those now if you guys got any. All right. Cheers, y'all.